Hi, I'm Scott with Artist Network, and today I'm looking at some Derwent drawing products. We have their Inktense line, as well as line of pens here. Their line makers and their paint pens, and some traditional drawing materials like their graphic pencils and some really cool tinted charcoal pencils. So I've been hearing a lot about the Inktense, and this is what I'm going to kind of explore first. This is a highly pigmented product, and it gets activated by water, which is a really fascinating thing. And so it comes as part of this whole set with this Inktense paper. It's a watercolor paper that's really designed for this product, but I'm sure you could use it for any other watercolor application. And what I like about it is that it comes in these 3 different forms. So it's the same pigment, but in slightly different binders. So you've got your pencil giving you more control, especially when you want finer details. You have blocks if you want to cover a broad area, and you have your pans here if you want to create more kind of wash effects. And it's really kind of like an intense ink. It dries to a permanent, in a permanent state, so you can layer on top of it and it becomes kind of transparent. And when you use it with the brush pens that Derwent makes, I think it makes it a really solid tool for urban sketchers or anybody really if you want to grab something and go and start working. It'll also work great in the studio if you want to create something that's more polished and finished. So let's take a look at that right now. I'm excited to experiment with these Inktense. So I'm going to give this a shot, making some marks with just this one pencil here, and I've got this yellow stick. So I've got the Inktense paper here. This is a nice watercolor paper. And right off the bat, it's a really pleasant feel. It's reacting to the paper really nicely. It's not really waxy or oily, but it really lays down smooth. And this is really just using the pressure of the pencil, but you can get nice and light. If I bear down, it really lays down and it fills the tooth of the paper nicely. So even as it is as a drawing material, and just laying down the color raw, that's pretty nice. And I can try that with the stick as well. I've got this yellow. I want to see what happens when they blend together. Again, really intense. This feels really similar, but I know I can get a nice broad area this way, which is really cool. All right, now let's see what happens when we add the water to it. And this is where the magic should happen. So I've got my brush pen here filled with water, laying down a bead here. This is the fine one. That's a lot of water, but look at that. Holy smokes. Right when you can see it really activating. How much more intense that is. And as you scrub on the paper, I can feel it forming into a paint. So there's some kind of consistency to it, and that'll allow me to continue to paint, which is really cool. Now what happens if I draw this down into the yellow, create a transition there, and that pigment is really nice and strong. If we come over here just a little bit to see what happens in this wash area, again, you can see how much pigment is picking up. I barely laid any down on that paper, but it's covering that whole area. So these should really last a long time. Anything that's this pigment rich should last a while. All right, so now I'm going to take a look at the line maker pens as well as the paint pens. So if I look at the line maker set here that I have, it has a nice range of thicknesses from the 0.05 to the 0.8, so very fine to a little bit heavier. And one of the things I look for in a pen is something that applies smoothly to the surface and it doesn't scratch the paper. And I also want a nice smooth application. So let's take a look at that. Oh my gosh, look at this really fine line that we can create using the 0.05. And it's nice and smooth and fluid, and it's really kind of hard to describe how smooth it is across the surface. And I'm looking to see that it's a nice, even and consistent mark. It's not creating these blotchy areas unless I really want them to have them. Beautiful, rich tone too. I love the quality of black that it creates. And then the paint pen, let's take a look at that. So I already activated it. When you first buy it, you might need to squirt out a tube of the blob of the paint there. But it's a beautiful, rich color. And then with that, you can see I had a little bit built up on the pen. But even then, with it all gummed up at the top, look how smooth and consistent that mark is. Beautiful, and it really feels nice against a smooth drawing paper. And I love the richness of the color and the opacity, so it's good stuff. All right, now we get to the traditional drawing materials here. So the tinted charcoal and the graphic pencils. I used the tinted charcoal to create this. I took more time with it because I really wanted to sit with the materials. This is more in my wheelhouse, and what I loved about it is that it gives me control over the temperature of the charcoal. So I used this, what is this, the peat, and then I also used the white for this, for the highlights, and I just love the tone that it created, the richness of it, and when I used just straight regular charcoal, it didn't quite have that same character. So I'm really happy with that. Now, if we take a look at the graphic pencils, these are must-haves for anybody, for any artist, is to have a good set of pencils. And I think these graphic lines are fantastic. So I've got the 6B here, and what I love about it is how smooth it lays down. So just with a really light touch with the 6B, it makes this beautiful mark. And what I like to pay attention to when I switch to the 4H is, I know that I'm switching to a harder material, but I don't want it to be scratchy. And I've had that happen before. I've picked up a pencil and I'm making marks on here and it's just scratching the paper and making an embossed mark that's really difficult to deal with later. These pencils aren't doing that at all when I work with them. They just stay nice and soft, but it gives me a nice range in values. So I'm really happy with these Derwent products. I'm really excited to start exploring the Inktense line further.